Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. Ever since creating this channel, I've been asked a recurring question. What are the worst Cartel videos that you have seen? The truth is, all of these videos are tragic and abhorrently violent, though I've now seen enough of these videos to gauge what are the worst of the worst. The sad fact is, however, the situation in Mexico surrounding drug cartels is ongoing and happening in real time. So the reality is, in the coming months and coming years, more graphic content will be released and uploaded online by these drug cartels. So maybe, in a couple of years, this video will be obsolete. We may think that we have seen it all, but maybe in the future, we see even worse. I want to make it clear that this video is in no way a ranking. At this level of depravity, they are very hard to separate. Number 1. Ghost Rider. In late summer of 2020, a brutal video found its way online depicting the brutal torture and murder of a suspected Carteles Unidos member. The perpetrators behind the act were Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion, also known as CJNG. The video was filmed in the state of Michoacán, just outside the town of Tepalcatepec. Michoacán for several years has been a hotbed of cartel violence, mainly due to its advantageous drug routes, seaports, and even natural resources. In recent years, CJNG have been advancing and fighting for control in the state, not only due to its natural resources and drug routes, but it's also personal for CJNG leader Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. He was born in the state of Michoacán, and some say he sees it as his divine right to run the state. Naturally, other cartels in the area are not taking too kindly to the attempted CJNG takeover. In turn, violence is spiking in Michoacán. One cartel taking the fight to CJNG go by the name of Carteles Unidos, also known in English as the United Cartels. Originally, they went by the name La Resistencia and were formed out of the split between the Milenio Cartel. They had and still have close ties to Sinaloa. During their early years, they fought to expel Los Zetas from the state of Michoacán, and although Los Zetas eventually fell by the wayside, a new enemy revealed itself in CJNG. These days, Carteles Unidos are heavily supported by Los Viagras and consist of a bunch of smaller cartels joining forces to fight the common enemy. Despite being outmanned and outgunned, Carteles Unidos have made CJNG's life in Michoacán very difficult. However, this is partly due to their close relationship with local military patrols. The violence still ensues to this day. One of the most harrowing examples of such violence is the Ghost Rider video. To fully understand the context of the video, we have to talk about the events leading up to it. During early September of 2020, in the town of El Aguaje, CJNG and Carteles Unidos engaged in a firefight that lasted for 3 days. 20 people were killed as a result. It's believed that the man in the video, nicknamed Ghost Rider, was captured in the heat of battle and then taken to a ranch in Tepalcatepec. It's believed that Ghost Rider's torture lasted for 3 days until he was killed. The video opens up and you see Ghost Rider kneeling on the ground, surrounded by several cartel members. At this point, serious damage has already been done. The man's face is badly burned due to being covered in rubbing alcohol and then subsequently being set on fire. Before being set on fire, Ghost Rider's face was also allegedly flayed. During the early seconds of the video, Ghost Rider's head is held up by the camera by somebody pulling his hair. His face is then set on fire, which inadvertently sets some of his clothes on fire. Ghost Rider manages to break the grip of one of the cartel members and he rolls around on the floor, trying to put the fire out, all while letting out the most harrowing scream, and it's hard to describe because it doesn't even sound human at this point. They once again repeat the process, once again holding Ghost Rider up to the camera and setting his face on fire once again. At this point, his face has been completely melted and he has no distinguishable features, though he still has his hair at this point. All whilst this is happening, Ghost Rider begs his captors to kill him. The video then skips forwards, and at this point, Ghost Rider's whole head has been completely burned. His head looks like a red talking skull, and at this point his clothes have been badly burned. They then set his skull on fire, and one of the Cartel members can be heard saying, "Just like the movies, the Avenger Ghost Rider." Other Cartel members can be heard laughing and mocking him. At the end of the video, it seems Ghost Rider has lost the energy to even scream. Instead, he lets out animalistic grunts. This is where the 1.5 minute video ends. Bear in mind that the victim was fully conscious throughout. Ghost Rider's real name and identity is unknown. All that is known is that he led a squad within Carteles Unidos. Since the release of the video, a couple of myths have surfaced surrounding Ghost Rider, one of which being the method for his torture was because he did the same thing to other people. That is completely uncollaborated. There is nothing to suggest that the reason he was tortured the way he was merely because his nickname was Ghost Rider, so they decided to make him look like Ghost Rider. The other myth being was that Ghost Rider was involved in another viral cartel execution, which once again, that rumour is completely unfounded. All we know was that he was a bad guy, he worked for Carteles Unidos, and he was on the front line. But regardless, gore myths aside, it's a horrible video. Number 2. The Guerrero Flaying. Released in 2018, the 9-minute long video depicts the gruesome murder of 2 men in the state of Guerrero. The horrific crimes were carried out by Los Viagras. Los Viagras is a cartel that was founded in 2014 in the state of Michoacán. However, since then, they have gained presence in states such as Guerrero and Jalisco. The cartel was created by the Sierra Santana brothers, but is primarily led by Nicolas Sierra Santana, also known as El Gordo. The name Los Viagras originated from an inside joke between the brothers. Due to the excessive use of hair gel by one of the younger brothers with a spiky hairstyle. Originally, Los Viagras started as an autodefensa group, or a self-defense group. In fact, in 2015, they even worked with Michoacán security forces to capture the leader of the Knights Templar cartel, Servando Gomez Martinez, aka La Tuta, who was subsequently arrested in February of 2015. With the Knights Templar cartel out of the way, Los Viagras then expanded into the drug trade, first by becoming involved in the production and transportation of methamphetamine, which brought them into a bloody turf war with CJNG, particularly in the Tierra Caliente region, a war which is still going on today. In fact, it's said that Los Viagras actually hold the advantage over CJNG in the Tierra Caliente region. Despite CJNG being the Viagra's main rivals, Los Viagras still have disputes with smaller local cartels in the area, one of which being the Guardia Guaranese, also known as the Guerrero Guards, who are essentially a cartel masquerading as a local defense group. Ever since Los Viagras were founded, the brothers in charge have garnered a reputation of being backstabbers, with an appetite for unimaginable violence. The Guerrero Flaying video being one such example. Upon the video's release, much misinformation surrounded it. The main myth being was that the older man was a police officer. However, nothing in the video suggests that he was. In fact, it suggested that he was a member or affiliated with the Guerrero Guards. As the video starts, 2 men are seen sitting on the ground with their hands tied up. The younger man has his mouth covered in what appears to be duct tape. The first few seconds of the video is a brief interrogation, and then the older victim is beaten with a wooden stick. The man is beaten for a solid minute. This is where the video gets worse. After the man has been beaten, he is then beheaded by one of the cartel members using a small knife. The man suffers for a while, as it wasn't a quick beheading. The worst thing about this, however, is that they make the son watch his father get beheaded, and the screams that he lets out are nothing short of heartbreaking and harrowing. Eventually, they complete the beheading and hold the bloody severed head up to the camera. At this point, the video reaches a new level of brutality. The video then jumps forwards, and it shows the younger man, the son, laying on his father's body. The son at this point has already sustained serious injuries. His chest is covered in blood, and it looks like he's been stabbed. As the video continues, it's clear to see what Los Viagras are doing to him. The boy instinctively tries to get in the fetal position to defend himself from his attackers. They briefly wrestle with the boy to restrain him and expose his chest. A Los Viagras member is using a knife to remove the boy's skin and flesh from his torso. Now this is incredibly graphic and hard to watch. The boy seems to be drifting in and out of consciousness as his chest is being flayed. To prevent him from going unconscious, a cartel member slaps him repeatedly. When he is conscious, he lets out terrifying screams. After a few minutes, the boy's skin and flesh from his chest to his lower abdomen has been completely flayed. His intestines can be seen protruding out of his body. Once the boy's chest has been completely flayed, the cartel member using the knife then creates a cavity in the boy's chest, making a hole to get to the heart. He is fully conscious throughout all of this. After a while, they get to the heart and cut it out. The heart, which appears to be still beating, is then briefly held up to the camera and then stabbed into the victim's lifeless body. And that is where the video ends. Number 3. Sponsored by Adidas. In 2020, CJNG published a gruesome video depicting the murder and partial cannibalism of a victim. It's unclear as to which cartel the victim was associated with. However, going by the audio, the victim was from Tepalcatepec. Since CJNG's creation in 2010, and ever since their rapid rise to power in the subsequent years, one tactic that is commonly used by CJNG is hyper-violence and brutal executions, many of which they film and upload to social media to scare rivals and scare the public. To make things even crazier, one of the acts of violence that CJNG use is cannibalism, which is carried out by their sicarios. Not only do CJNG see it as a good way to scare their rivals, but the sicarios themselves see it as a way to ingratiate themselves into CJNG even further and to pledge their allegiance to El Mencho, who runs the cartel with a cult of personality. As mentioned, the video was released in 2020 and is around 1 minute long. The title of the video, sponsored by Adidas, originates from the attire in which the killer is wearing. He's wearing an old school Adidas cap. As the video starts, you see the victim laying on the ground on his back. His hands have been tied behind his back and he's wearing nothing but underwear. He also has a chain around his neck. He is surrounded by several cartel members. As the video starts, the man wearing the Adidas cap pulls out a huge combat knife. He plunges it in the victim's chest as he screams, then he cuts vertically down the victim's chest, which creates a huge cavity, exposing the victim's organs. The victim is still conscious, though due to extreme pain and blood loss, it appears that he goes into shock. With the victim's chest cut open, the Adidas cap-wearing cartel member reaches inside the victim's chest and starts rummaging around with his organs. He locates the victim's lung and grabs it. He then takes the knife and cuts a piece of the victim's lung off. To make matters worse, he takes the chunk of the victim's lung, removes his face covering, and puts it in his mouth and starts to chew, and he eventually eats it. As he does this, his fellow cartel members cheer, laugh, and whistle. The camera then pans to the victim again, and he is still conscious. You can see his lungs expanding and deflating, popping out his chest. It's extremely graphic. As the video ends, the cartel member with the knife continues to cut the victim's chest open, and that is where the video ends. When this video was released, one misconception was that it was the victim's heart which was being eaten, which I actually thought as well when I first saw this video. However, it is indeed the victim's lung, which is devoured by the CJNG member. I also believe that this was the first cartel cannibalism video. Before this was released, there were rumours of cannibalism going on within cartels. However, this video confirmed those rumours. The video is extremely bloody and extremely graphic, and offers you a true insight into the sheer depravity of CJNG. Number 4. CJNG dismemberment. It's hardly surprising that CJNG feature so heavily on this list. As an organisation, they understand how important social media is to their image and also to recruit, as well as to spread fear by uploading their gruesome execution videos, a tactic that was popularised by Los Zetas several years ago. When it comes to CJNG, many in the so-called gore community will bring up videos such as Ghost Rider or sponsored by Adidas as being their worst. However, one video that doesn't get as much attention despite its brutality depicts the savage dismemberment of an alleged Los Viagras member. The video is just over 2.5 minutes long and is filmed during the middle of a night in a wooded area. A naked man is seen laying on the ground with his hands tied behind his back. He also has a chain around his neck. The victim is surrounded by 2 CJNG members, and the brutality ensues immediately. One of the cartel members is holding the victim's right leg to keep him still, whereas the other cartel member, who is holding a knife, takes the victim's left leg and starts cutting him at the knee. As the victim screams in agonising pain, his left leg at the knee is dismembered in a matter of seconds. It's clear that the man performing the dismemberment has done this before. He then takes the severed leg and starts beating the victim with it. The cartel member takes a few seconds to admire his work and also plays up to the camera before moving on to the victim's right leg. Once again, the same process is followed. His leg at the knee is completely dismembered in a matter of seconds, and once again, they beat the victim with the severed leg. It's worth mentioning that the victim remains fully conscious throughout the whole video. They briefly take a second to pose with the victim's severed limbs. They rest them on his torso. They then turn the victim over, so he's laying on his stomach, and naturally, they start dismembering his arms. They cut at the shoulder and start with his left arm. At this point, the victim starts screaming again. He's still conscious and is feeling every second. At this point, they move on to his right arm and start cutting. The victim at this point is still conscious, but has stopped screaming and instead is groaning. It's almost like he's lost the energy to scream. As his right arm is being dismembered, he also talks to his torturers, telling them no, no, no. The video then cuts forwards, showing a brief interrogation of the victim before he met his demise. He has a chain around his neck, and he's clearly been beaten. And after the short interrogation segment, that is where the video ends. I felt it necessary to include this case on this video, as every other case is highly discussed and highly talked about within the gore community. However, for whatever reason, despite its brutality, this video seemed to go under the radar. The best way I can describe it is as the worst Cartel video that nobody talks about. Number 5. Funkytown. Released in 2016, Funkytown has gone on to become the most infamous Cartel video online and one of the most infamous gore videos in general. As the years have passed since Funkytown's release, a dark lure has developed around the video. When it comes to most graphic Cartel videos, it's usually very easy to ascertain which cartels are responsible and, in many cases, who the victim is associated with. However, when it comes to Funkytown, this isn't the case. There are more questions than answers. The Funkytown obsession isn't just due to the graphic nature of the video, but mainly the mystery surrounding it. The video is just under 3 minutes long. As the video starts, a bloody man can be seen laying on the ground with several cartel members surrounding him. The filming location is unclear, though many speculate that it was filmed in a nightclub back room. The white tile flooring is puddled with blood. The cameraman moves closer to the victim and you can see the full extent of his injuries. His arms have been bound together in front of his chest, though his hands have been cut off. The skin on the victim's face has been completely flayed and his eyes have been gouged out. It's incredibly graphic. One of the cartel members is trying to slash the victim's throat with a sickle. Instinctively, the victim tries to get in the fetal position to protect himself. They reclaim control of the victim and hold him still so that they can resume the torture. They switch to a box cutter and once again start slashing the victim's throat. The victim responds by letting out a blood-curdling scream, which almost doesn't even sound human. To shut the victim up, they ram the box cutter blade into his mouth and instinctively he bites onto the blade. Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses can be heard playing in the background. They ram a broom handle into the victim's mouth to muffle his screaming and to pin him to the ground. They continue slashing his throat with the box cutter as the victim tries to scream. The slashing continues for a while, but then the victim starts to violently struggle on the ground. He's sliding in his own blood as the cartel members try to keep him held down. The song Funkytown then starts playing in the background. Towards the end of the video, the victim manages to break his arms free from the rope. Instinctively, the victim tries to touch his non-existent face with his non-existent hands. One of the cartel members can be heard whistling along to Funkytown, and at the end of the video, the man with the box cutter starts stabbing the victim in the armpit, and that is where the video ends. The video itself doesn't give many clues in regards to who the victim was or who the perpetrators were, though one of the cartel members can be heard saying, "You chose the wrong side." What is for certain is that the video was filmed in Mexico. The men in the video are speaking Spanish with Mexican accents. In fact, from what I've been told by people I trust, they seem to think that the accents are from the Michoacan or Guerrero region. Cartels such as CJNG, Los Viagras, and La Familia Michoacana operate in those areas, along with a whole host of others. Due to its graphic nature, many speculate that this is a CJNG video. However, if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that's not the case. One thing about CJNG, when it comes to these videos, they love to pat themselves on the back and let everybody know who they are. However, that isn't the case with this video. There are no references to any criminal organisations. In fact, I do wonder whether this video was ever intended to be uploaded online, because the reality is, these types of videos are uploaded by cartels for propaganda, and ultimately, if we don't know who the perpetrators are in the video, then it's pretty useless propaganda. So I do wonder whether the person filming maybe sent the video to some associates and subsequently it got shared around and then found its way online by accident. It's certainly possible. Since Funkytown's release, myths have developed around the video, the main one being that there is a longer version available. According to some online, the extended version is anything from 6 minutes to 11 minutes long. However, these claims are not substantiated by any evidence. I myself have done extensive research into this case and have spoken to people with their ears close to the ground in Mexico, and as far as they're concerned, this mythical longer version does not exist. The reality is, in recent years, Funkytown has become the most popular topic in gore, and if this longer version did exist, I'm sure somebody would have found it by now. All in all, I find it highly unlikely that we will get any answers in regards to the Funkytown video, but ultimately, time will tell. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, if you can enjoy this sort of content, and the sad fact about this video, in a couple of years, this could be obsolete. Who knows? Knowing the Cartel, there's a very good chance they will release even more graphic content that could easily fit on this list in the future. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thank you guys for the support, it's much appreciated. Please feel free to follow me on Twitter, the link is in the description below. And also, I have now created a Patreon where it's basically going to be anything goes. I'm going to be talking about whatever I want. There will be some disturbing content. If we get enough people, exclusive live streams, things like that. Basically, it's a blank canvas for me to really talk about what I want. Some different content, put it that way. But yeah, thank you guys for the support. It's much appreciated. And as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.